So of course I was bound to say something dumb eventually, like a false equivalency. Um, yeah, it was wrong to compare, at least at the moment in time or in general, comparing school shootings and dead kids to orphans. You know, it's a totally different, separate issue. But the fact that, you know, the reason I brought it up mostly was it seems like there could be a hypocrisy because, you know, in some way, and this is weird to bring up because I know human children aren't dogs and pets, and we like to claim they are, but at the end of the day, when your kid dies, don't people usually like not have a kid immediately? I know it might depend on the person, but I was just thinking like when somebody's pet dies, they go out and get one. Like I've always heard people talking about like when so and so dies, let's do this and get that, and it's like, damn, that's I don't know, it just comes off a little disrespectful, like the idea of like replacing a family member. But at the same time, kids who nobody wanted or couldn't take care of, I'm gonna go with the assumption that nobody wants them as of yet because nobody's adopted them. But I just kind of feel that kids who are born that are in adoption centers for years and years and nobody loves them, it's kind of like, you know, the child mortality rate has gone down in America. Violence has declined, but now, as we're more luxurized and we have the like more walls and safety nets and ways of avoiding problems, because nobody can just walk into our house and rob our stuff. And when there's a shooting, they can be identified rather quickly. They don't just like hide in the shadows. So, you know, the irony of children not dying in nature en masse, but instead the trade-off is they get to just be unloved and in adoption centers and nobody's there for them. And this is totally not anyone's fault necessarily. Like this can, I almost want to say the adoption, the anti I almost think it's like an anti-adoption movement with the mass children that are in there. But yeah, it's very sad that the trade-off to not dying is just not being loved and being socially starved. And although it's not men's fault for society being like that necessarily, I mean, obviously women have a choice to choose. And I guess the choice is good, but I don't know, man. I just think there's just so many issues compounded on top of each other when it comes to orphans that it's just, you know. Alright, my main point of this video was false equivalencies. So I'm not here to compare, oh, orphans, why don't they adopt now that their kids are dead or whatever. That's just shitty. And I said that if you watch my other videos, kind of. I wasn't really trying to say that, but anyways, a false equivalency, like how I've seen people post on Facebook, like school lunches, are expensive, or there isn't school lunch or something like that, or it's not affordable, and they compare that to free lunch in prison and like some luxuries in prison and say, well, why do they get this? Why the hell should they get that if kids don't? Um, yeah, it's honestly ridiculous. Why can't we have both? I feel like it's honestly set up on purpose like that for people who aren't like thinking of all the issues at once. They just think of it as one at a time, and I don't think the planet can move at small increments at a time. You know, we have to make giant leaps. And that does not mean killing people off like these crazy eco-fascists. Um, but there's also people who say, like, why don't we focus on the climate issues instead of the social issues? And it's like the stupidest thing ever, because you could do both. And if you don't have the social issues in play, how the hell are you going to be stable enough to save the planet? Um, I mean, right? Could I be wrong? Because institutions are supposed to be fixing the planet, but isn't the idea that we're all supposed to work together as well to recycle and yada yada like that? Um, so yeah, you can't you can't just throw human rights out the windows to fix the climate. And I think that's like that person wasn't thinking when they said that. I think there's no way they were thinking, and if they really think that, they might. I mean, they probably want their own family to be safe, and at the end of the day, their own bloodline matters more than everybody else below them and away from them. So, almost sounds fascist, but I don't want to say that because the guy is nice. So, yeah, I'm backing away from that. So, yeah, this is an update on false equivalencies. Anyone could make the mistake of making them. Um, Especially one as cringy as, like, using children and using them as like a weapon and like weaponized children. Like, think of the children and blah 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 blah. That almost sounded like what I was doing with hey, why don't you adopt now that your kids are dead? Or how could you care, but you don't care about the adoption? They have their own lives. They're not obviously thinking about adoption. Nobody's thinking about everybody all at once. Statistically, that's just impossible. Humans are not built for the safety of the planet. We're mostly in it for ourselves, but altruism exists. Our species is slowly getting better and we're expanding, you know. But when we dehumanize each other, we use other animals as their likeness. So it's like, are we really that good? Institutions are good, and there's things holding our evils back and whatnot. But the ACLU, that almost seems like a small veneer, like a dam that's just holding back, like pure darkness that's just ready to snap. So, you know, it almost seems like America is Majin Buu, because at its purest state, at its whitest state, at its whatever, before it brought in immigrants, it was relatively evil. But then once they started bringing in immigrants, it started to chill out. Once it was socializing more and being used to each other, used to different faces, way of living, way of food, clothing, etc. Yeah. So, and now, like, it's almost like as we're cutting off immigration and all our rights, we're sliding back into the Kid Buu state, you know? It's pretty crazy.